Hello, everyone. Here we are. We're going to do Zechariah chapter 12. So let's get started. And please ignore the fact that I wrecked my bangs and made myself look like Friar Tuck. Okay, so we'll just ignore that for my sake. All right, here we go. Zechariah 12, a prophecy. The word of the Lord concerning Israel. The Lord who stretches out the heavens, who lays the foundation of the earth, who forms the human spirit within a person, declares, I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Judah will be besieged as well as Jerusalem. On that day when all the nations of the earth are gathered together against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Now, this is definitely talking about Armageddon, when all the nations are aligned and surrounding little tiny Jerusalem. That's going to be an amazing day. On that day, I will strike every horse with panic and its rider with madness, declares the Lord. I will keep a watchful eye over Judah, but I'll blind all the horses of the nations. Then the clans of Judah will say in their hearts, the people of Jerusalem are strong because the Lord Almighty is their God. On that day, I will make the clans of Judah like a fire pot in a wood pile, like a flaming torch among sheaves, sheaves, like a sheaf of wheat, or a sheaf of wheat. Sheaves would be the plural of sheaf. They will consume all the surrounding peoples right and left, but Jerusalem will remain intact in her place. The Lord will save the dwellings of Judah first, so that the honor of the house of David and of Jerusalem's inhabitants may not be greater than that of Judah. Interesting. The Lord will save the dwellings of Judah first, so that the honor of the house of David and of Jerusalem's inhabitants may not be greater than that of Judah. Okay. On that day, the Lord will shield those who live in Jerusalem, so that the feeblest among them will be like David, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of the Lord going before them. On that day, I will set out to destroy all the nations that attack Jerusalem. And I'll pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They'll look on me, the one they've pierced. Now, who did they pierce? Jesus Christ. This is all end times talk. Now, if you remember the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston and the great feats and that the Jewish people did, if you remember the Passover where they painted the blood over the doors and they were inside their house eating the Passover lamb, and there was a great faith going on among them. That's what I think of when it says even the most feeble will be like David. Okay, so there'll be beautiful things happening amongst the people and in their hearts and in their spirits. And here it says now, and I will pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. They will look on me, Jesus, the one they have pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son. Now, how many times have I told you the Jews do not see Jesus right now? They're purposely blinded. The Lord's allowing it so the last of the Gentiles can get in. But when that door shuts after the last Gentile, the Jews' eyes will be opened, and here it is. Here's a description of that moment. I'll pour out on the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication, because that spirit of grace will have to be there so that when they open their eyes, they aren't mortified unto death, that they pierced Jesus Christ, okay? They will look on me, the one they've pierced, and they'll mourn for him as one mourns for an only child, and grieve bitterly for him as one grieves for a firstborn son, which of course he is. On that day, the weeping in Jerusalem will be as great as the weeping of Hadad Rimmon in the plain of Megiddo. That's the plain where Armageddon will be. Megiddo is part of Armageddon. The land will mourn, each clan by itself with their wives by themselves, the clan of the house of David and their wives, the clan of the house of Nathan and their wives, the clan of the house of Levi and their wives, the clan of Shammai and their wives, and all the rest of the clans and their wives. So right there in Zechariah 12, you have been given a description of the moment that the Jews' eyes are opened, but not a spirit of horror or anger or retribution is poured on them, but a spirit of grace. Grace to them, to God's chosen people that called for the crucifixion of God's only Son. Grace is going to be given to them, and they will weep. Okay? All right, Zechariah 13, and I believe one of my favorite scriptures of all is in Zechariah, and it's so beautiful, guys. I've written it in the front of most of the Bibles that I've owned. I always put a scripture or two, and we have one coming up here that is so beautiful and so filled with grace that it makes me want to burst into flame and disappear and reawaken in heaven. That's how much it affects me. So here we go. Zechariah 13, I'll let you know when we get to it. On that day, a fountain will be opened to the house of David and the inhabitants of Jerusalem to cleanse them from sin and impurity. So the grace is going to flow for them, On that day, I'll banish the names of the idols from the land, and they'll be remembered no more, declares the Lord Almighty. I'll remove both the prophets and the spirit of impurity from the land, and if anyone still prophesies, their father and mother to whom they were born will say to them, "You must die because you've told lies in the Lord's name." So even their parents won't have mercy because anything that's contrary to the spirit of grace and the Lord that's flowing is going to be seen as, ooh, get it away. It won't matter who's doing it. It will not be wanted. Then their own parents will stab the one who prophesies. That's pretty rough. I'm not laughing at the stabbing. I'm laughing at the quick change there. It's like, I will remove both the prophets and the spirit of impurity from the land. And if anyone still prophesies, in other words, he's moving away. He's getting rid of all these phony prophets. If anyone still prophesies, so this could be a figure of speech almost, their father and mother whom they were born will say to them, "You must die because you've told lies in the Lord's name." Then their own parents will stab the one who prophesies. So, it could be a figure of speech, like, if there's any more iniquity anywhere, even the parents will get rid of the one who's doing it, even if it be their own child. On that day, every prophet will be ashamed of their prophetic vision. They won't put on a prophet's garment of hair in order to deceive. Each will say, "I'm not a prophet. I'm a farmer. The land has been my livelihood since my youth." If someone asks, this is it right here. If someone asks, "What are these wounds?" Now, this version says "on your body," which would include the hands and the feet. But in older versions of scripture, it says, "And the day will come where they will say to me, 'What are those wounds in your hands?' And I will say to them, 'These are the wounds I got in the house of my friends.'" Oh my good gosh almighty. What kind of God is so beautiful to call them friends when they called for his crucifixion? That's grace, people. That's what grace is. It's not foolishness. It's knowing that, it's God knowing he's God and that these are just weak people and he's shedding grace all around. Now, this version says if someone asks, "What are these wounds on your body?" they'll answer, the wounds I was given at the house of my friends. I think that version, I'm going to look this up in the King James Version. Zechariah 13, King James Version. Now, you know, it all basically means the same thing, but I think the context is a little lost here because this is definitely Jesus speaking. Here it is. In the King James Version, which is the version that King James put together, Zechariah 13:6, and one shall say unto him, what are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. I could burst into flames. I could burst into flames over that scripture. The kindness is too much for me. I mean, I don't know what to say. I hope you get it. Awake, sword. I'm going back now to the New International Version. Verse 7. Awake, sword, against my shepherd, against the man who is close to me, declares the Lord Almighty. Strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. And I will turn my hand against the little ones in the whole land, declares the Lord. 2/3 will be struck down and perish, yet 1/3 will be left in it. This third I will put into the fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name and I will answer them. I will say they are my people, and they will say the Lord is our God. So he's talking about getting rid of the idols, getting rid of the false prophets, getting rid of iniquity, getting rid of impurity. 2/3 of them, even down to the children, are gone. They're going to be removed. But the 1/3 that's left, the remnant, God is going to say, I am your God. They are my people, and they will say the Lord is our God. Okay, Zechariah 14. I'm getting my composure back here. I'm telling you, that verse just slays me, because without that kind of grace and mercy, I would never have been saved. If God wasn't just that kind, I would never have gotten saved. I would have been thrown into hell because I deserved it. I'd earned it for sure. I'd eaten the 10 Commandments myself for lunch. I'd broken them all. And without that kind of shed grace and kindness and deep mercy, I would not be. I'm sure that I would have died probably at 28, definitely by 40. But I definitely wouldn't have attained heaven either. The only reason I'm here, born again, saved in front of you, is because of that kind of grace. And I dare say that's true of all of us, okay? Because we're all dirty. And I'm going to read you something very interesting in that book I have on hypocrites. I'll read it tomorrow. It's very neat, and it really changed my life in a lot of ways. Okay, Zechariah 14. A day of the Lord is coming, Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls. So there'll be people in their houses going through their stuff. I'll gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. The city will be captured, the houses ransacked, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be taken from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem. This is the end. This is the Battle of Armageddon, people. And the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will extend to Azel, A-Z-E-L. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and that's Uzziah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all the holy ones with him. Now that will be you and me. If we've already been raptured, if we've already passed away and we're up there, That's you and me. Then the Lord my God will come and all the holy ones with him. We're all going to come back for this battle. It's so exciting. I can't stand it. I'm hoping, I'm assuming we're riding horses. I've already picked my horse out. Now I'm thinking people are looking at me going, man, this woman is cuckoo. But I mean, I've thought about this stuff. We're going to come back with the Lord and we're going to wage war. And I'm so excited. I mean, when the Lord tells us saddle up, oh my gosh, I'm going to be there. I just pray I'm in shape. I told the Lord, when you rapture me, will you give me my body back the way it used to be, young and strong and trim? Don't we all wish that? Okay. All right. So let's read that again just so that we know what's going on here. A day of the Lord is coming, Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls. So there'll be an invasion going on. I'll gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. The city will be captured, the houses ransacked, the women raped. Half the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will not be taken from the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it'll extend to Azel. Azel, again. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come and all the holy ones with him. And of course, angels too. On that day, there will be neither sunlight nor cold, frosty darkness. It will be a unique day, a day known only to the Lord, with no distinction between day and night. When evening comes, there will be light. In other words, it'll be evening time, but there will be light. It'll still be light. That's to drive it home to you, that this is a day unlike any other. This is the day of the Lord. This is the great battle. This is Armageddon. Only the Lord knows when he's coming and when all of this is going to take place. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it east to the Dead Sea and half of it west to the Mediterranean Sea, in summer and in winter. The Lord will be king over the whole earth. And this is where we go into the millennial reign, where Jesus is living in a perfected earth with us. With us. On that day, there will be one Lord, and his name the only name. The whole land from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, will become like the Arabah. That was the river. But Jerusalem will be raised up high from the Benjamin gate to the site of the first gate to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the royal wine presses, and will remain in its place. It will be inhabited. Never again will it be destroyed. Jerusalem will be secure. Excuse me again. This is the plague with which the Lord will strike all the nations that fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they're standing on their feet. That sounds like nuclear war. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. That sounds nuclear to me. Don't take my word for it. Just, hear it how you hear it. On that day, people will be stricken by the Lord with great panic. They'll seize each other by the hand and attack one another. Judah, too, will fight at Jerusalem. The wealth of all the surrounding nations will be collected. Great quantities of gold and silver and clothing. A similar plague will strike the horses and mules, the camels, donkeys, and all the animals in those camps. Then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, and to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, they'll have no rain. R-A-I-N, no rain for crops. If the Egyptian people don't go up and take part, they will have no rain. The Lord will bring on them the plague he inflicts on the nations that don't go up to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. This bears some looking into. On that day, holy to the Lord will be inscribed on the bells of the horses. And the cooking pots in the Lord's house will be like the sacred bowls in front of the altar. Every pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy to the Lord Almighty, and all who come to sacrifice will take some of the pots and cook in them. And on that day, there will no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Lord Almighty. And I'm assuming a Canaanite means anybody with iniquity in them. Okay, so this is going to be a new dawn for everybody. Okay, I suppose New Agers would call it the age of Aquarius, but we know that this is the millennial reign. It seems to me there was something I was going to come back and talk to you about today from our last chapter. I don't remember what it is, but I'll go over everything and see if there's anything that we need to look into. I do think it's interesting that it says everybody has to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. Let's just look really quick here. And I believe that was the one where everybody made their own little tent house away from their regular house, and they spent a week in it. Sort of like everybody got to camp out. I'm pretty sure that's what the Festival of Tabernacles is, so we won't look into it. But I will do some research and I'll bring it back to you tomorrow. Now, tomorrow we're going to start Malachi, which is our very last book of the Minor Prophets. Now, interestingly enough, Malachi wasn't a person. Malachi means my messenger. So they're not sure who wrote the book of Malachi. It's just called Malachi or Malachias because it means my messenger. So somebody wrote it. From what I understand, it was 100 years after Haggai and Zechariah. So I'll look into it a little more, and I'll try to remember the things that I've said I'll look into, and we'll get to it tomorrow. I love you very much. I will see you then. Don't get disturbed by different interpretations. Remember, the word never loses its basic meaning, okay? Even if something is, said in a certain way, it still means the same thing. And in the case of my favorite scripture, it means grace, grace, and grace, and that's it. Whether you say, they will ask him or I will ask him, what are the wounds in your hands? What are the wounds in your body? It's the same thrust. It's grace, because the highest point of that scripture is the wounds that I received in the house of my friends. I love you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.